Hi, I'm Michael Coleman with the SoundWorks Collection, and today we are talking about The Sound of Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere, the new film from director Scott Cooper. We are joined today by production sound mixer Tod Maitland, composer Jeremiah Frates, re-recording mixer and supervising sound editor David Giammarco, and supervising sound editor Eric Norris. We discuss shaping the film's sonic identity, from capturing live vocals on set, recreating Springsteen's iconic studio environments, and blending actor Jeremy Allen White's performances with Bruce Springsteen's original recordings. So David, what do you remember when director Scott Cooper reached out to you? He said, I'm telling the story about Bruce Springsteen. It's based on the book Deliver Me From Nowhere from Warren Zanes. What were your initial thoughts? What was it that he was telling you? What was the direction that Scott was guiding you initially?
Well, I was thrilled because I grew up as a huge Bruce Springsteen fan, and so this was really an incredible opportunity. And we talked a lot about that in our meeting when he hired me, and kind of what the flashbacks would sort of be like and where to go with that. And so it was excitement from the get-go. He was very open to us trying different things. And then, we kind of zoned into what was right for the movie.
Jeremiah, for you, what were your thoughts of just about tackling on the music side of a film about Bruce and knowing that Bruce is going to be, kind of indirectly, directly involved?
I think I had my blinders up, which was good. I think that I only felt pressure once I was lucky enough to attend only one film premiere, but it was the New York Film Festival premiere. And all the red carpet questions were like, how much pressure did you feel? And I think truly only in that moment did I actually feel the pressure. I wasn't even quite sure. I didn't know, with such a big movie with so much attraction, I didn't know if my role, how safe my job security was in trying to score this film. So I just really sent stuff that I thought was really going to work. I tried to go deep into what the character went through. I read the book, of course. I watched the movie Badlands, which apparently really deeply inspired Bruce, with this album, Nebraska, and just kind of tried to send stuff and make stuff that I thought would really work with the picture. And Scott was really, as a director, as a collaborator, he was really great at sort of dictating. He really wanted the actors to be acting, and I guess to elaborate on that, not have the music lead the scenes or lead the emotion. Let the actors do what they're paid to do. Let the actors do what they're so good at doing, which is act. So I think it was kind of from go, let's keep it sparse, but let's keep it authentic and raw, much like that album Nebraska feels and sounds like.
I think, Todd, when I spoke with you last, you were just in pre-production or just to start production on this film. Do you remember what Tod Maitland was thinking then and how he feels now? Like, how would you describe this journey? Because now watching the film, it is so seamless, from weaving in Jeremy Allen White's vocals and being authentic to the vision of what Scott sent out. But what do you remember from the pre-production days, and how would you describe this journey?
I would say the weaving part I would leave up to Paul. He did an amazing job, weaving in and out between Jeremy and Bruce. I love doing these things. I'm kind of working my way through all the great rock people, from the Doors to the Beatles to Dylan and Bruce Springsteen. And I think we all grew up with Bruce Springsteen. So, I even remember the first time he came on set, it was like, I'm not in awe that often of people, on film sets, but he was someone I was in awe of, and it was great because he was there literally almost every day, to the point where you actually just had to go, excuse me, Bruce, I need to get by over here. It was such a pleasure. And Scott wanted to go into it and really keep the reality. He almost shot it like a documentary in a way, so you really feel like you're in there with the character. And that's the way he wanted the sound to go. And he had told all of us, he wanted this haunting mix, of Jeremy and Bruce, to carry through. And just the fun of playing with the flashbacks and all of that. But I obviously did the same, read the book, watched Badlands, listened to Nebraska many, many times, just try to get it as much in my head as possible as to what they wanted from me and what I could give.
Tod, knowing that we are going to be doing a lot of live records and then we're going to try to capture that, what was the balance of pre-records and what is actually happening on stage, especially for this opening with Riverfront Casino, Cincinnati 1981 performance?
Everybody's out on the road tonight. There's no place left to hide. Together, Wendy, we live with the sadness. I love you and all the madness in my soul. Girl, I don't know where we're gonna get to that place we really wanna go. We'll walk in the sun, but till it tramps like us, baby, we were born to run. Slide tramps like us, baby, we were born to run. Oh, tramps like us, baby, we were born to run.
On every music-based movie now, you do pre-records of all the songs that you're going to do on set, and you break that out into instrument and vocals. And the goal really is to capture the vocal live. And, when you do it, there's a lot of tricks to do that. You give, all of the people on stage earpieces. You put the speakers out in front, of them as much as possible. When they're singing into a practical microphone like that, you have a lot more flexibility because they're right on top of it. So you can have some bleed come in. And we keep the audiences all live and all of that, just, to capture that live energy that, is existing at that moment. Cause when he performed like that, it was like Bruce was on stage, it was pretty special. And Jeremy trying to capture Bruce's voice. Bruce has one of those really difficult registers that'll blow your vocal cords out, after, 6 takes or so. So you're always trying to get those close-ups on that first, before he really loses his voice. Nebraska was different because that was soft and easy on the voice, but Bruce has a tough voice, so hard to duplicate. But great energy, it's just so much energy. Those live scenes are just so much energy. They're so much fun to do because people really are into it. It's like they're there.
To contrast that, we have Bruce returning home, Colts Neck, New Jersey. I love how this is treated. It's very quiet. There's birds, there's winds. We later kind of understand Bruce's relationship with that when he says the quiet can get a little loud. I love maybe David, Eric, for you to talk about how you treat that home environment, how you build a sanctuary, how you can be a little more intimate with those moments and the scenes that we share when we're at Bruce's home.
Well, just in general, we really tried to be as sort of naturalistic, almost documentarian in style with the sound. When we initially were laying stuff up before we had a chance to really get into details with Scott, the director, we tilted a little bit more towards the Hollywood side, and that's not the direction he wanted. So we pulled it back, and it was just about, trying to come up with as many details without making it sound inauthentic. We wanted it to feel real. So like when we were in the Colts Neck house, like especially in the bedroom where the recordings took place, we added almost no backgrounds in there. We wanted it to feel really, really quiet because that's also was the recording studio for the album. And we were very judicious about what we chose to put in that space. And then there's other locations like in New York and maybe outside the Stone Pony where we could add a lot more layers of detail and make it sound, again, real, but a lot more layered and full because those are, busier locations.
Jeremiah, for you, I can imagine because this film is so centered around so many needle drop cues from Nebraska and just from his career. How did you and Scott find those moments, when you are spotting the film where you can get in. Because I love the handoff that you have between some of these moments, and how it really is a connective tissue for just the emotion of what Bruce is going through.
I think there was specific themes that were developed, a Bruce and Faye theme, flashback theme, sort of this growing anxiety and the depression theme, and ultimately the incredible performance by Jeremiah White when he breaks down in that therapy chair without saying a word. And then obviously the father lap at the very end. There was not that much original score in the movie. I think it was like between 32 and 35 minutes, which is quite, minimalistic. And I knew going into the project there was going to be a lot of Nebraska. I knew there would be a lot of, or at least a handful of Bruce, other, non-Nebraska stuff, hits and all that good stuff. And then there's these great needle drops from like Foreigner and all types of great bands to kind of, set that mood. So I think for me as the composer, I wanted to stay out of the way, but not so much that it felt boring, but not try to write such evocative cues that it would feel like you're trying to steal the shine away from Bruce or the movie. And I think I tried to kind of, flirt with that tightrope walk. And there was moments, even that first opening scene, when we first see the Colt's Neck house with the orange shag carpet. I remember I'd put in a really, really soft, minimalistic audio cue that I'd written when Jeremy walks in, and then he's looking out at the back, out through this glass, and you can see his face. And Scott was like, I love the cue, but I want it to be silent. It's just like, and I love that. I think it's really, when you watch that scene again, that stillness is so different than a lot of movies, I think, that you see these days, where it's how can you constantly be hit with stimulation and sound and audio and movement. It really has this otherly movement that takes you into that intimacy of that bedroom and kind of captures that moment in time that he recorded it. And then it was like, in the wind, like just he did it and then it was gone. And I think that silence kind of did more than any sort of sound or music could have done for that particular scene.
That silence was something that was talked about all the way throughout, from the very early in production. That house had to be as quiet as possible. We held all traffic. We never went with any airplanes. We did everything we could possibly do to deaden it, quiet it, and keep it that vacuum of a space, and it really shines through. And it's, the use of silence is underused in film, and this film used it very well.
Can I break protocol and ask a question to the group?
Yeah, of course.
There's this, one of my favorite scene in the whole movie is the sound design. So Jeremiah White as Bruce is starting to kind of, you can tell something's really going on internally, and he starts to tap the book he's watched on the coffee table, and it starts to then sync up perfectly with this, sounds like a Leslie organ, which then goes to the Stone Pony, and I think it goes into Lucille, that cover. How did you guys sync up the tapping with that Leslie? Because it almost sounds like the Leslie vibrato is like Jeremy's tapping seamlessly goes into this crazy rock scene. And I think it's one of the coolest transitions ever. I'm really curious. Was that like a happy accident, or was that something you guys worked on for days and weeks to try to get that like just right?
Initially set up by Pam Martin and Jason Reuter, Pam picture editor, Jason the supervising music editor. But in the picture cut there was a rhythm change in the tapping. And so it's production, it's Todd's recording. I altered the sync of it a little bit to make it rhythmical. It landed with the music, and then it blasts into the Stone Pony. And I always loved it. And I always loved that the music hit hard instead of ramped in with the tap. I liked how it just came in and took off, but it was kind of it was not intended to be that, what you're saying, Jeremiah, but it was trying to fix something, and then it happened that way. So I thought that was pretty good.
Bravo. That transition is like insane. I love it. It's honestly one of my favorite transitions I've ever seen, and one of my favorite in the movie. It's like, it's so original, and it hits so hard.
Yeah, that's Pam and Jason, I think, and Scott.
That's awesome. Mentioning the Stone Pony, when we get into Lucille, this Little Richard cover, I mean, it's rocking. Todd, what is it about that environment? How did you guys handle that club? It's fun. It's like not really a kind of a dive bar, but it's where you'd want to be to see this type of band performing. What do you remember about that location?
It was my favorite location, my favorite part of shooting, because just a Stone Pony has so much history, and I'd never seen Bruce there. I've been there living in New York. I've been there before, but never for a period of time. I think we were there for 3 days. But, you really just kind of have to set the stage and wind everything up, and it just goes, and as I was saying with the live pieces before, the audience just jumps on board. The way we filmed it, felt very real. The other band was great. When you're jumping in on a movie like this and you get that role to be, the Bruce's other band, it was, pretty exciting. So, it's just let everything go and get as many ambient mics out there to get as much ambience as you can get, capture as much of the room and from speakers and that. And then obviously just trying to capture the live vocal again, in each of those. And then, and I always try to get as many pieces as I possibly can for post, just to give them as many colors that they can work with, so then they can pull the different parts of it and use them however they feel.
It's a really cool scene. And I love the contrast that with this flashback when we're introduced, this family, he's at home and the parents are arguing. What do you guys remember about stylizing these flashbacks? Because it later becomes a lot more abstract, kind of a disconnect feeling.
Well, I could tell you one thing that we tried to do. We were thinking when Bruce was recording Nebraska, he used the Echoplex, and I think it was Dave. It was your idea, right? To use the Echoplex maybe to treat all of the flashbacks. And we actually spent a lot of time on the stage trying to make that work, and we ultimately decided that it was distracting. It wasn't really working, and so that's not something that we ended up doing. But that was one of the avenues that we went down.
The first black and white scene that opens up the movie is quite idyllic until young Bruce is being asked to retrieve his father from the bar by his mom. It's like a really heartbreaking scene. And one of my favorite aspects, which really only something I clocked, I did a panel with the full cast and director Scott Cooper in New York. And somebody, I think the moderator or interviewer, had pointed out that the opening scene is echoed later in the movie, because you have young Bruce fetching his father from the bar, and then, fast forward 25 years later, whatever, dad, lost in Chinatown, middle-aged Bruce, 32, whatever, finding his father again in a bar. And there's something really heartbreaking and beautiful about that. But the second flashback, I think, is when present-day Bruce is in his car looking at the old house, and there was this sort of piano motif, sort of simple melodic thing, this do-do, do-do, do-do. I think the first time we see that, it's pretty raw, felted, upright piano. The second time we see that, I think it's when young Bruce is coming down with the baseball bat and hits his dad in the back. But before that, now the felted upright piano is treated through the TEAC. Is it the TEAC 144? Is that the Porta Studio? And that was a really cool idea, actually, by Jason Reuter. He said, hey, we have a bunch of these. Do you want to throw some of your stuff through? And it was sort of an 11th hour decision. And it was a cool way to subtly, but also kind of significantly ramp up the tension in each flashback scene or each. So that second time we hear that piano melody, it's a little bit more messed up and distorted. And then it's the most distorted and the most agitated when we see Bruce having the panic attack at the county fair. We hear that when Bruce is sort of hallucinating and sort of seeing a guy that's not his dad, but then it is Stephen Graham, and that sort of almost hallucination, or what's fact and fiction. I really ran it through there, and I put like some weird detune sort of delay on it. And that was a sort of interesting way that the more you watched each reel, and then the more you really watch the whole movie from a 30,000 foot bird's eye perspective, it was neat to see that from starting from such a minimalistic spot, you're not painting yourself into a corner ever, because you're not really doing that much sonically or compositionally. So you can really only expand. And I think Scott and Pam were really vocal about where the edges of that were. So it was nice though to have so much direction in terms of, velocity and how much to expand the sound and all that. So, yeah.
Mentioning this TEAC 144, Todd, I can imagine when you're on set, did you become like a technical supervisor? Like, did you have any history with this device? What can you say about that prop? I mean, was it really a prop, or was it a functional?
It was totally functional. And what I found out from one of the talks that we had done is that each one of us independently, everyone on screen here, used that TEAC in one way or another. I used it in the beginning. I simultaneously recorded on the TEAC as I recorded on my normal recording system, knowing that it would never really be of use because you'd never be able to keep it in sync. It's really kind of a one pass through kind of thing. But just to have it, to play with it, and just again to do whatever to help with that reality of it. And then each one of us, when we're talking about it, each one of us had one of those TEACs and ended up using it within it.
You want to know why I did what I did? Sir, I guess it's just a meanness in this world.
I think we got that.
Oh, yeah, we got that one. So this song got a name?
I was gonna call it Starkweather. But now I'm thinking Nebraska.
I like using the period equipment and anything that can help to give it that sound, because sound has really changed over the years. And this one was obviously very specific, so as half the movie is about him, trying to recreate that.
I can imagine that eBay and Reverb.com are people are flooding the market trying to find one to reconnect.
They had a hard time finding them. To find ones that really worked. We had one on set. I had one, and I think that there were two others, and that was all they were able to find that really functioned.
I bought one from Japan. I think it was off Reverb, and it was sort of at that 11th hour. So I haven't opened it yet. I hope it works. But I honestly kind of realized, well, once the movie comes out, people are going to scoop up these, and there wasn't that many. By the time I was looking, I had heard production, and you guys had scooped up maybe 3 or 4. So by the time I was looking, it was pretty scarce, honestly.
I'm thinking later too, Jeremiah, when Faye and Bruce are on the with Faye's daughter on the boardwalk, they're bowling. There's this piano cue, which is that your Firewood detuned piano at that time that we're hearing?
Yeah. So, the Firewood piano. Long story short, I have a piano tuner in Denver at my house. His name's Michael Jackson. He's originally from Los Angeles, and it's my favorite piano. I think it's from 1955. I don't think the strings have ever been changed. It was meant for the trash, but my mother took it home so me and my older brother could play with it in our home in New Jersey. And that's kind of how I self-taught myself how to play piano. And it doesn't sound great. It's sort of an engineer's worst nightmare. But it's just kind of oozing with character. And I figured it was the perfect instrument for this movie. The piano pieces in the movie, believe it or not, this is a weird inspiration, but growing up listening to Bruce Springsteen songs, not from Nebraska, particularly live cuts of Bruce, when he would do those like 45-minute, 2-minute intros before like the drums and the band would come in. Sometimes just like someone meandering like on a piano. And I sort of was like, how can I, take inspiration from, how meta can I make the music without it feeling contrived or too much ripped from Bruce's discography. So the piano, I wanted it to feel like almost childlike and meandering the way I would say interpret some of his intro pianos were playing. And that boardwalk montage, that was actually a really tricky scene to get right because I didn't want it to feel too big and too overly emotional, but I also wanted it to feel just right. And as a Jersey guy, all the skee ball and all the vibes of the boardwalk and the sounds of the ocean and the seagulls and everything about it just felt rang so true. So it was oddly like not like a super pivotal scene in the movie, I wouldn't say, but it was really challenging for me as the composer to get that right. And then there's this like kind of cut to Bruce back at the Colts Neck house, kind of sitting down against the bed, writing "I'm on Fire." And it was interesting. Again, you were talking about the choir from Badlands and how that sort of blended somewhat seamless in that kind of sinister guitar cue when he was doing his research. I think something similar. This was probably more of a happy accident, although maybe Jason and other editorial picked up on it and changed the cue to make it sound better. But my score bled so beautifully into what was perceived as Jeremy Allen White's guitar playing on screen. And it was really cool how it just felt like the blending of that felt interesting to me. Maybe something like what Birdman did, where you had these drums in the movie and then you would see the drums. I don't know, just some sort of blending of like, it wasn't just the score and just the movie. It was sort of this like interwoven, brackish water or something.
A little later, obviously, Todd, we introduced yet another piece of gear, which is crucial or essential to Bruce's process, which is this Echoplex. So, what can you say about how it was treated on set? Because I really liked how it was written in the script when he says the distance that we are hearing, it's like it's from the past or something. So, like Bruce is hunting for the sound, and the Echoplex is that answer. What do you remember in terms of how you captured it on set?
Basically, on set, it was a prop. I had two recordings. I had a dry recording without the Echoplex and recording with the Echoplex, and would feed it onto set, as it transitioned into the Echoplex song. But no, it was all done prior to I Can Claim Nothing.
I think Jason used it quite a bit. And I like everything so much of this was inspired by the book for me. Like, I took glockenspiel and put it playing on a glockenspiel and just use it as sound design and put that through an Echoplex, and that plays with the wind chimes that it's layered in with the wind chimes that Bruce hears as a kid. And Bruce commented on the fact that the wind chimes were something he remembers from a kid and that would harken back to what was going on in the family dynamics. And so it was things like that and playing with the Echoplex on a lot of things. And, the Frankie Teardrop, Suicide's Frankie Teardrop, that I took an old drum machine and made a rhythm like that and used that later in the Panic Attack as part of the elements in the heartbeat. And then we took snippets of Nebraska itself with working with Jason, some of the harmonica, and treated that, and some of the screams and treated that, and kind of wove that into the sound design throughout. And that was utilizing not on my end, it wasn't utilizing a practical Echoplex. I couldn't get one of those from props department, but the plug-in. And Jason was using it, I think, quite a bit.
There's this scene, Bruce, he's driving fast. The car is pushed really hard, like just to the full extent of the engine. The car spins out, and it's incredibly stylized and very, he kind of stops himself from, crashing his car. Eric, can you talk about how the scene was crafted? Because sonically, everything is happening very quickly. And as an audience member, we just assume the worst. But yeah, how do you remember this scene playing out?
I think that the aspect of that scene that I think is the most interesting is we had the idea since we're going in as he drives faster and faster, we're going sort of further and further inside Bruce's head. And that song is so ugly and distorted. We had the idea to do a distortion treatment on the car engine sound. And so we used sound toys.
Decapitator?
Decapitator, yeah, exactly.
Decapitator's the best.
Yeah. And came up with like a really intense, distorted sound where we ended up. And then as the car accelerates further and further and further, we just went from dry to completely wet with that distorted sound underneath the Frankie Teardrop song. And it's so, I thought just from a sort of a sonic perspective, it's interesting listening to it in the mix, because as distorted as it sounds sort of by itself, once you have it in there with the music, it becomes kind of subtle, and B, the distortion in a weird way kind of separates from the sound of the engine. It's just kind of an interesting sort of auditory effect, but I think that it definitely adds to the scene, helps integrate it all.
Born down in a dead man's town, the first kick I took was when I hit the ground. End up like a dog that's been beat too much till you spend half your life just to cover it up now.
For me, I was waiting because I remember hearing about that some of the movie takes place at the Power Station studio, and I could not wait to see it. Todd, what do you remember about this location? How much of it is accurate to the time? Like, what is it like to be in that space?
It's all accurate to the time. I mean, that studio is like no other studio I've ever been in. If you see the architecture of it, it almost pyramids up with natural wood rising up to a 20-foot ceiling. It's, however they designed it acoustically, it has a sound that, people just love. So I myself love filming in recording studios because, number one, they're obviously totally set up for sound. Two, I can integrate, with their equipment, and gives me a lot more flexibility than even what I have. And it's just such a real environment, and you have access to everything else that you possibly need, headphones for everybody, all that kind of stuff, which is just more logistics, but makes it all a lot easier. But, being in these natural spaces and the history of it, and you walk down the walls, and you see all the artists, that recorded there over the years. And it's just, anytime you can step back in history and see these pieces, and obviously Bruce recorded there a couple times, it's special. It's nice. It's really one of the great things about this business is to be able to be back into those places. So many films I've done were from different eras, and great filmmakers really recreate those eras, that era. So you feel like you're living it, which is pretty great.
Jeremiah, what was it like to return there on your side?
It was incredible. I mean, to record the orchestral cues there and to sort of explore the space, and just to see, Scott Cooper was there, Jason Ruder was there, my score producer Francesca Lazarin was there, my engineer, I always work with David Barron, was there, and just being back there, knowing that the movie was shot there, knowing that Bruce Springsteen himself had recorded some of his biggest songs ever in his discography there, it was just really special.
Did Bruce come to those sessions?
No, he was slated to, and then he didn't, and I think for me, it would have been cool if he was there, but I think it also might have been a little nerve-wracking. I think, to have a day and a half to record everything and get it all right, for sure it would have been interesting if he was there. But it was a smaller space than I had realized, because when you watch Deliver Me From Nowhere, even the control room, it looks quite spacious. So when you're actually there, maybe the camera adds 10 feet or something, but yeah, it was incredible to be there.
That's awesome. I love that. This is where we're here, born in the USA. It's cool. It's a great scene, and it's everything that I want out of a Bruce Springsteen film like this. But I will say the thing I wasn't expecting is, the role of Jimmy Iovine. I mean, talk to me about this phone call. Is that Jimmy? Are we hearing Jimmy Iovine?
It is, yeah.
Jimmy.
So how do you capture a Jimmy Iovine phone call for a scene like this?
You capture it live. There are devices where you can hook into the phone line so that I can hear, have the incoming call, and then I'll obviously mic the person that's on camera, so it has a different sound to it. The difficulty comes whenever you're doing those things is when people overlap. Since there's only one sound, there's only one earphone. So like if two people are talking at the same time on a phone, you hear both of them coming through that earpiece. So I talked to the actors and Jeremy Strong and said, look, try not to overlap as much as you can, because then at least that gave a couple tracks, the on camera Jeremy Strong and then Jimmy off camera. And as long as they didn't overlap, I had a clean, reception, from him. So I just laid that down on another track, and that was all. Yeah, he's a character. He's quite a character.
How many takes? How many takes did you give Jimmy? How many? Takes?
It didn't take him. It did not take him many, because he just kept going on and on. I mean, it was really more like one giant continuous take, and they would try to weave in the questions that they really wanted for the movie, because Jimmy would just go on. He would just go on about other things. You had to reel him back in, to the storyline.
Following these scenes, we get to this moment. I love that we are introduced to the engineers. We have Mark Maron playing one of the engineers, and they're cutting vinyl with Bruce in his bedroom, and Bruce is on the electric guitar, and then it goes into I'm on Fire. Can you guys talk about the treating of this scene? It's a really cool montage, and once again, a handoff from Bruce in his bedroom into this other scene, and it's kind of another montage moment.
First of all, I think Paul did an amazing job with the song. And it just, it lights up and takes over. And, but Tod recorded, like when we were trying to get different props for the film earlier on, it was like, okay, what are we going to do? And just reading the script, what are we going to do about, the mastering of this, and where is some of that equipment going to be? And then, we were going to set up to go recording in LA at some different, record cutting facilities. But Tod recorded all this great material, and all that happening in there was super helpful for us. And then the song was playing full on, and some of that cutting sound is we pushed through quite a bit, but we would add to it. But I have to thank Tod for all that stuff.
My pleasure. Yeah, that was a real lathe. They went out and we basically shot in this antiquated place. So when you first walk into the old mastering room, it was just crazy, because everything that was there, nothing was dressed. That was exactly the way that it was. So it was really a throwback piece from probably from the 60s. And then they rented a lathe or bought a lathe, and we spent a day just filming all those close-ups, all those really intricate close-up pieces of the cutting and everything else that was involved. Yeah, and I tried to get, as many microphones as close as possible on it.
Maybe lastly, as we wrap up, there's the closing of the film, and obviously, like, we have, my father's house, and then the El Paso County Fair and the road trip, and there's this really intense moment of Bruce having this overwhelming experience, and there's this kind of theme of the heartbeat of getting into Bruce's head. Can you guys talk about the evolution of this scene and how sound really supports it?
It started with Pam, our picture editor. She started with a practical heartbeat in there. We augmented that, and then we added other elements to go in with that. But the whole, it was all to build to where he was going. It changed editorially quite a bit throughout, but that heartbeat and then becoming an accelerated secondary beat kind of was just all used to elevate to. And then again, this movie's full of low, intense, and down dynamics. So, and then it goes down to the quiet with Maddie on the phone, trying to talk to John Landau. So there's a lot of opportunities to play with that kind of stuff and work that heartbeat. And that's where the heartbeat itself just had multiple layers of different things in there.
The end of the film, we're back on the road with Bruce. We're at a live show in Los Angeles, and there's this incredible, time goes on. His father is in his dressing room, and he has this conversation with him. What do you remember about bringing this film home? Todd, can you just talk about, what it was like to close out this film and kind of there's never really closure when it comes to some of these very delicate relationships, especially between father and son. But what do you remember about just the overall enthusiasm or feeling, the emotion of this scene and how it was captured?
It was a big build to that. We actually shot that in sequence. So we finished him coming off stage, going back, and we did that all in sequence. It's an actor's moment, when you get great actors like that, and you really just the two of them can just be there, and you don't need anything else going on. That's good acting. That's good writing. That's and it's always a pleasure to watch. It doesn't happen all that often. I remember doing Dead Man Walking with Susan Sarandon and Sean Penn, and they did a scene where it's like 5-10 minutes almost, with just the two of them talking. And you just don't get the moments like that where you can have real acting in that. And of course it was truly emotional. Sound wise, it was just difficult to capture, because the dad was in one of the fat suits, to make him look older, which is a very noisy thing. And they're just placing microphones, and Bruce always talked down the whole movie. So there was always the element of trying to capture him in the best way possible. So again, it was just a lot of microphones and challenge and enough to distract me to my job from watching, the performance, but a great performance to watch. It's special when you get to watch that.
You guys have done an incredible job on this film. I wish there was a follow-up. Like, let's keep going. Like, let's see more of these albums. But for a bookend on this part of Bruce's life, it was really well done. So congratulations, you guys, on an excellent film and a soundtrack.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Many thanks to our guests today. And if you'd like to listen to more conversations from the SoundWorks collection, please subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on all major podcasting platforms, including the video version on YouTube. You can also find exclusive daily video clips on our Instagram and TikTok pages and connect with other creatives around the world through our email industry mailing list at soundworkscollection.com. If you have a story or project that you want to propose for the show, please send us an email at info@soundworkscollection.com. And thanks again for listening.